The cry for help, their emergency beacon, cut through the peaceful atmosphere of the Galactic Alliance headquarters like a blade through silk. Council Speaker Veltar, a towering crystalline being whose body reflected the chamber's soft lighting, called the emergency session to order. Representatives from 43 species filled the Grand Assembly Hall, their diverse forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes that normally symbolized unity and cooperation. Today, however, the mood was grim. The holographic display flickered to life in the center of the chamber, revealing the pale blue face of Elder Kythera. The Zephyrian leader's normally serene features were twisted with desperation, her large silver eyes wide with terror. Behind her, smoke drifted across what appeared to be a command center, and the distant sound of explosions could be heard through the transmission. Honored members of the Alliance, Kythera began, her melodic voice trembling with barely controlled panic. I speak to you from Zephyr Prime, though I fear this may be among the last transmissions you receive from our world. 3 days ago, the Void Ravagers broke through our outer defense grid. Their fleet consists of over 300 warships, led by vessels we've never seen before. The chamber filled with concerned murmurs and cliques from various species. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy as peaceful traders and skilled artisans. Their crystal cities were marvels of architecture, and their diplomatic corps had helped broker peace between dozens of warring factions over the centuries. They had no standing military beyond basic patrol ships and civilian defense platforms. Elder Kythera continued, her image wavering as another explosion rocked her location. War Chief Draknar has made his intentions clear. The Ravagers do not seek conquest or tribute. They want our people as slaves for their gladiatorial arenas and our children for their genetic experiments. They have already begun systematic bombardment of our population centers. Zephyr 2 fell yesterday and Zephyr 3's communications went silent 6 hours ago. The hologram shifted to show orbital footage of the Zephyrian homeworld. Massive dark ships hung in space like predatory insects, their hulls bristling with weapons that rained destruction on the peaceful cities below. The crystal spires that had taken centuries to grow were shattering under the assault, their fragments glittering as they fell among the fleeing civilians. We estimate 18 hours before our remaining defenses fail completely, Kythera said, her voice breaking. Our population of 12 billion souls will be reduced to a few million slaves if nothing changes. We call upon the Alliance, upon any who would hear our plea. We do not ask for vengeance or glory. We ask only that some fragment of our people might survive. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the chamber in heavy silence. Council Speaker Veltar's crystalline form shifted through several color spectrums, indicating deep contemplation. Around the hall, representatives began activating their communication systems to consult with their home governments. The first to respond was Ambassador Quentel of the Hegemony Worlds. His species resembled oversized mantises, and his chittering voice was translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. The Hegemony offers its deepest sympathies to the Zephyrian people. However, our fleet is currently engaged in border patrol duties along the neutral zone. We could potentially redirect humanitarian vessels within 72 hours. 72 hours. Everyone in the chamber understood what that meant. The Zephyrians would be extinct by then. Senator Bluve of the Aquatic Federation spoke next, his words bubbling through his breathing apparatus. The Federation condemns this unprovoked aggression. We are prepared to offer resettlement assistance to any Zephyrian survivors and will dedicate significant resources to rebuilding efforts once the crisis has passed. One by one, representatives offered condolences, future aid, and promises to remember the Zephyrian culture in their archives. The pattern was depressingly familiar. The galaxy's civilized species had grown comfortable with peace, and their military forces were designed for patrol duties and ceremonial displays rather than actual warfare. The Void Ravagers understood this weakness and exploited it ruthlessly. They struck isolated worlds with overwhelming force, enslaved or exterminated the populations, and moved on before any organized response could be mounted. In the past decade, 17 species had fallen to their raids, and the Alliance had done little more than issue strongly worded condemnations and build memorials. Ambassador Marcus Torres had been sitting quietly in the human section, listening to the debate with growing frustration. At 45, he was considered young for a diplomatic position, but his background as a former military officer gave him perspectives that his civilian colleagues often lacked. Earth had only been a member of the Galactic Alliance for 22 years, making humanity one of the newer species in the organization. Most of the other representatives viewed humans with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Earth was classified as a Class IX death world, meaning its environmental conditions were lethal to the majority of galactic species. Humans were respected for their adaptability and work ethic, but they were often seen as crude and violent by the galaxy's more refined civilizations. When the discussion reached the human delegation, Torres stood slowly. His movement drew attention. Not just because of his size, humans were larger than most galactic species, but because of his bearing. Where other ambassadors appeared comfortable in their ceremonial robes and diplomatic finery, Torres wore a simple military-style uniform that spoke of practicality over protocol. The Terran Federation offers immediate military assistance to the Zephyrian people, Torres announced. His words cut through the chamber's atmosphere like a plasma bolt. The reaction was immediate. Several representatives began speaking at once, their translation systems creating a chaos of voices. Council Speaker Veltar shifted to a sharp orange hue, indicating surprise and concern. Ambassador Quentel of the Hegemony was the first to form coherent words. With respect, Ambassador Torres, the situation requires careful consideration. The Void Ravagers have deployed over 300 warships, including several Dreadnought-class vessels. Intelligence suggests they have access to weapons technology that exceeds standard Alliance specifications. Torres nodded calmly. We are aware of the tactical situation. Our response will be proportional to the threat. Asterisk. Senator Blue's breathing apparatus bubbled frantically as he processed this statement. Surely you don't mean to suggest that humanity intends to engage the Void Ravagers directly? Your species has been spacefaring for less than a century. Even your largest vessels would be outgunned by their escort ships. Our fleet composition may surprise you, Torres replied evenly. The chamber erupted in what could charitably be called concerned discussion. Multiple species began debating the wisdom of allowing the humans to throw their lives away in a futile gesture. The mathematics were simple. Humanity possessed perhaps 60 military vessels spread across their territory. The Void Ravagers had deployed a force 5 times that size, with ships that had been proven in dozens of previous raids. Elder Silandros of the Academic Collective, whose people resembled tall, thin trees with dozens of flexible branches for arms, requested attention. When the chamber quieted, his voice carried the weight of centuries of study and analysis. Young humans, he said, his tone gentle but firm, we appreciate your courage and your desire to aid the Zephyrians. However, courage without wisdom leads only to additional tragedy. The Void Ravagers are not merely raiders, they are a military force that has perfected the art of overwhelming assault. They have conquered species with military traditions spanning millennia. Their warchief Drachna has never suffered a defeat in over 200 engagements. Torres listened respectfully to the elder's words before responding. We understand the risks and we appreciate the concern of our allies. However, the Terran Federation has voted unanimously to respond to the Zephyrian distress call. Our ships are already moving into position. This statement caused another wave of surprised chatter. Council Speaker Veltar's form shifted to a deep purple, indicating confusion and alarm. Ambassador Torres, when you say your ships are moving into position, what exactly do you mean? As of 2 hours ago, the Terran Defense Force began mobilization procedures, Torres explained. Our estimated arrival at the Zephyr system is 14 hours from now. The silence that followed was profound. Ambassador Quentel's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed this information. You began military deployment before receiving Alliance authorization. We began deployment when we received the Zephyrian distress call, Torres corrected. Earth recognizes the universal right of species to request aid when facing extinction. We don't require committee approval to answer that call. What the assembled representatives didn't know was that at that very moment, across human space, the largest military mobilization in their species' history was already underway. In the asteroid belt around Sol, mining ships were being retrofitted with weapons. Systems designed for breaking apart asteroids but equally effective against starship hulls. Around Mars, atmospheric processes were being converted into mobile weapons platforms. In the outer system, colony ships designed to carry families to new worlds were being loaded with marines and assault equipment. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Terran flagship Indomitable, watching the tactical displays as ships from across human space converged on the rally point near Jupiter. At 38, she was one of the youngest flag officers in Terran service, but her experience fighting pirates in the outer colonies had taught her lessons that would prove valuable in the coming engagement. Status report, Chen ordered as her senior staff assembled around the holographic display table. Captain David Park, her tactical officer, activated the fleet composition display. 237 vessels confirmed and ready for jump, Admiral. 42 military ships, including 8 heavy cruisers and 26 destroyers. The remainder are converted civilian vessels with volunteer crews. Chen studied the numbers. It wasn't the size of the fleet that would matter, it was how they used it. Humans had learned to fight in the asteroid belt, where space was full of debris and cover, where ships needed to be tough enough to absorb impacts from rock fragments traveling at orbital speeds. They had learned to fight around gas giants, where radiation would cook most galactic species but only required humans to take mild precautions. Most importantly, they had learned to fight dirty. Engineering assessment? Chen asked. Commander Lisa Zhong stepped forward. She was small even by human standards, but her expertise in ship design was legendary throughout the fleet. All vessels have been equipped with enhanced life support systems rated for sustained combat operations. Armor has been reinforced using techniques developed for asteroid mining equipment. Weapon systems are a mix of military-grade and improvised solutions. Some of our converted cargo haulers are carrying mining charges that pack more punch than standard naval torpedoes. Chen nodded. The Void Ravagers were expecting to face a conventional fleet using conventional tactics. They had defeated dozens of species by overwhelming their organized formations with superior numbers and firepower. What they weren't expecting was a fleet designed around the principle that every ship should be able to operate independently in the most hostile environments imaginable. Communications, Chen ordered. Send a message to all ship commanders. Remind them that we are not just fighting for the Zephyrians. Every species in the galaxy is watching to see whether the civilized races will defend each other or continue to let bullies pick off the weak one by one. As the human fleet prepared for its jump to the Zephyr system, similar conversations were taking place throughout the galaxy. In the refined cities of the hegemony worlds, military analysts tried to calculate how long the human force would survive against the Void Ravagers. In the crystal libraries of the academic collective, scholars prepared to write humanity's obituary alongside the Zephyrians. None of them understood what was really coming. The Void Ravagers had spent centuries perfecting their tactics against civilized species, races that valued individual lives, that fought with honor and restraint, that sought to minimize casualties even among their enemies. They had never faced a species that viewed war as applied problem-solving, that treated their ships as expendable tools rather than precious resources, that had learned to fight in conditions where a single mistake meant death. They had never faced Deathworlders. The Death Fleet arrives. War Chief Drachna stood in the command center of his flagship Bone Render, watching the final phase of the Zephyrian extermination with satisfaction. The massive Void Ravager was over 2 kilometers long, its hull black as space itself and bristling with weapons that had destroyed countless worlds. Around him, his bridge crew worked efficiently at their stations, coordinating the systematic destruction of another peaceful civilization. Drachna himself was an imposing figure even among his warrior species. Standing nearly 4 meters tall, his muscular frame was covered in ritual scars and cybernetic enhancements that marked his victories. The Void Ravagers were raiders by culture and predators by nature, their society built around the conquest and enslavement of weaker species. Status report, Drachna growled, his voice like grinding metal. Subcommander Thex, a smaller but equally scarred warrior, activated the tactical display. Zephyr Prime's population centers are 93% neutralized, War Chief. Resistance has effectively ceased. Our landing parties report excellent harvesting. The Zephyrian physiology will provide premium stock for the arena worlds. Drachna nodded approvingly. The Zephyrians had fallen exactly as predicted, their pathetic defense force lasting less than 6 hours against his assault fleet. Like most civilized species, they had relied on diplomacy and alliance protection rather than building real military strength. It made them easy prey. Estimated completion time. Drachna asked. 18 hours for complete pacification, War Chief. After that, we can begin loading the cargo ships with slaves and valuable resources. The crystal formations alone will fund 3 new battle groups. ***. The War Chief was about to respond when the sensor operator station began emitting urgent warning tones. The junior officer's face went pale as he studied his readings, double-checking the data before reporting. War Chief, we have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge. Unknown vessel configurations, approximately 230 ships. Drachna turned to the main display, his predatory instincts immediately focused. The tactical screen showed a cluster of new contacts appearing in formation near the outer planets. The fleet was larger than he had expected, but not impossibly so. Intelligence had suggested that the Galactic Alliance might send a token force to salvage their reputation. Species identification. Drachna demanded. The sensor operator worked frantically at his console, running the ship configurations through their database. After several minutes, he looked up with confusion evident on his scarred features. War Chief, the energy signatures and hull compositions match Terran Federation specifications. They appear to be human vessels. Drachna's laugh was like the sound of tearing metal. Humans were among the newest species in the galaxy, barely worth notice. Their homeworld was a toxic wasteland that most civilized species couldn't visit without environmental suits, and their military was primitive compared to established galactic powers. Humans, he repeated, amused. How many actual warships are we facing? Approximately 40 military-grade vessels, War Chief. The remainder appear to be converted civilian craft, cargo haulers, mining ships, and colony vessels. The War Chief studied the display with growing contempt. The human fleet was approaching in loose formations that violated every principle of proper military doctrine. Their ships were arranged in irregular patterns with no apparent command structure. More like a merchant convoy than a battle fleet. Open communications, Drachna ordered. Let's see what these primitives want before we destroy them. The main screen flickered and displayed the bridge of a human warship. A woman in military uniform appeared, her small frame dwarfed by the massive command center around her. To Drachna's eyes, she looked pathetically fragile. Humans were smaller than most galactic species and appeared to have no natural weapons or armor. I am Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force, the human said, her voice steady despite facing a fleet that outgunned her forces by orders of magnitude. You will immediately cease your attack on the Zephyrian people and withdraw your forces from this system. Drachna's roar of laughter echoed through his bridge. Human, you bring a collection of converted cargo ships against the finest fleet in Ravager history, and you demand surrender. Your pathetic species will be extinct before the day ends. Chen's expression remained calm. War Chief Drachna, you have one opportunity to withdraw peacefully. After that, we will remove you from this system by force. The audacity was breathtaking. Drachna could barely contain his amusement at the tiny human's threats. You amuse me, little creature. Perhaps I'll keep you alive for the arena. The crowd enjoys watching weak species die slowly. So be it, Chen replied. All Terran vessels, weapons free. Engage at will. The transmission ended, and Drachna immediately ordered his fleet to battle stations. Around him, bridge officers began coordinating what they assumed would be a brief and entertaining slaughter. The Void Ravagers had perfected their tactics. Over centuries of conquest, and they had never faced a species capable of meaningful resistance. The first indication that something was wrong came when the human weapons opened fire. Ravager military doctrine assumed that civilized species used energy weapons, lasers, plasma cannons, and particle beams that could be deflected by proper shielding. The humans used kinetic projectiles, chunks of dense metal accelerated to incredible velocities by magnetic coils. The projectiles slammed into Ravager ships like meteors, their kinetic energy tearing through armor designed to absorb energy weapons. Ships that should have shrugged off the attacks found their hulls cracking and their internal systems failing. The impact sent shock waves through vessels designed for elegance and intimidation rather than structural integrity. Sub-Commander Thex watched in disbelief as his tactical display showed damage to multiple ships from the opening volley. War Chief, their weapons are primitive but effective. They're using mass drivers and kinetic kill vehicles. Primitive weapons for a primitive species, Drachna snarled. Close distance and engage with superior firepower. The second problem became apparent as the fleet's closed range. Civilized species fought at long distance using precision strikes and careful maneuvering to minimize casualties. The humans charged straight into the Ravager formation like berserkers, their ships absorbing damage that should have sent them fleeing but continuing to advance and fire. Captain Maria Santos watched from the bridge of the converted cargo hauler New Horizons as Ravager plasma bolts tore chunks from her ship's hull. The former merchant vessel had been hastily equipped with mining lasers and asteroid-breaking charges, but her crew had volunteered knowing they faced impossible odds. Hull breach on decks 4 and 5, her engineer reported. Life support is failing in the aft sections. Seal the breaches and keep us moving, Santos ordered. We are not here to survive, we are here to give the Zephyrians a chance. The New Horizons had already absorbed damage that would have destroyed most Galactic warships, but she kept fighting. Around her, other converted civilian vessels pressed their attacks with the same relentless determination. When their weapons failed, they used their ships as missiles, ramming enemy vessels with the massive bulk of colony transports and cargo haulers. Commander Chen watched the battle develop from the bridge of the Indomitable, coordinating her fleets. Unconventional tactics. The Void Ravagers were superior in terms of individual ship capabilities, but they were fighting according to rules that humans had never learned. Target their command vessels, Chen ordered. Pattern Delta formation, all ships focus fire on their flagship. The Pattern Delta formation was something unique to human space warfare, developed during the asteroid belt conflicts where traditional fleet tactics were useless. Instead of maintaining neat lines and coordinated movements, human ships operated in clusters that could rapidly reconfigure based on local conditions. They fought like a swarm rather than an army. Warchief Drachna felt his flagship shudder as multiple human vessels concentrated their fire on the Bone Render. The massive ships' shields flared and failed under the sustained assault, and kinetic projectiles began impacting the hull directly. Damage report. Drachna roared. Forward armor compromised, War Chief. Multiple hull breaches. The humans are targeting our weapon systems specifically. The tactical display showed a pattern that should have been impossible. The human ships were coordinating their attacks with precision that suggested advanced battle computers, but their communications were too primitive for such coordination. What Drachna didn't understand was that humans had learned to fight as a unified organism, each ship's crew making independent decisions that supported the overall battle plan. Captain James Rodriguez piloted his converted mining ship Iron Will through the Ravager formation, dodging plasma bolts and missile salvos while looking for targets of opportunity. His ship had been designed to break apart asteroids in the belt, and its cutting lasers were proving devastatingly effective against enemy armor. There, Rodriguez called out, spotting a Ravager destroyer that had separated from the main formation. All weapons, target their engine section. Let's see how they fight without propulsion. The Iron Will's mining lasers carved through the destroyer's hull like it was space debris. The enemy vessel's engines exploded in a cascade of secondary detonations, leaving it dead in space. Rodriguez was already moving on to his next target before the wreckage had finished tumbling. Similar scenes played out across the battlefield. Human crews that had spent their lives working in conditions that would kill most galactic species brought that same casual relationship with death to their combat operations. When their ships were damaged beyond repair, they ejected in escape pods and watched as their vessels continued fighting on autopilot, guided by simple but effective AI systems. Subcommander Thex stared at his tactical display in growing horror. The Ravager fleet was losing ships faster than they could destroy the human vessels. The enemy's willingness to sacrifice their own ships for tactical advantage was something beyond his experience. War Chief, the humans are using suicide tactics. They are ramming our ships with vessels full of explosives. Drachna watched as a human colony ship, its hull already glowing with plasma damage, accelerated directly toward one of his heavy cruisers. The collision tore both ships apart in a brilliant explosion, but he could see the human crew had ejected just before impact. They are fighting like animals, Thex whispered. No, Drachna realized, his warrior's instincts finally recognizing what they faced. They are fighting like predators. The battle continued for 6 hours, but the outcome was decided in the first 30 minutes. The Void Ravagers had superior individual ships and more advanced technology, but they were fighting a species that treated warfare as applied engineering. Every human tactic was designed around the assumption that their ships were expendable tools rather than precious resources. When the Bone Render finally suffered critical damage to its main reactor, War Chief Drachner made the only rational decision available. For the first time in his career, he ordered a retreat. All ships withdraw to hyperspace, he commanded. This engagement is terminated. The surviving Ravager vessels fled the system, leaving behind nearly a third of their fleet. The human victory was complete, but the cost had been severe. Of the 237 ships that had entered the battle, only 87 remained combat capable. Commander Chen surveyed the aftermath from her damaged bridge. The Indomitable had taken multiple hits and would require months of repairs, but she was still afloat. Around the system, human ships were already beginning rescue operations, pulling Zephyrian civilians from the burning cities and establishing field hospitals on the surviving planets. Status report, Chen requested, Captain. Park consulted his damaged displays. 150 ships lost or severely damaged, Admiral. Casualty reports are still coming in, but preliminary estimates suggest 12,000 personnel killed or missing. The numbers were sobering, but Chen felt no regret. The alternative would have been the complete extinction of 12 billion. Zephyrian lives. That was a trade-off any human commander would make. Elder Kithra's voice came over the communication system, transmitted from a refugee camp on Zephyr Prime's surface. Commander Chen, on behalf of my people, I offer our eternal gratitude. You have saved our civilization at tremendous cost to your own. That's what neighbors do for each other, Chen replied simply. The news of humanity's victory spread throughout the galaxy within hours. In the refined chambers of the Galactic Alliance, representatives struggled to understand how a primitive species had accomplished what their advanced civilizations could not. The answer was simpler than they wanted to acknowledge. Humans didn't fight wars to win glory or prove their superiority. They fought wars to solve problems. The Void Ravagers had been a problem threatening innocent lives, so humanity had solved it with the same methodical efficiency they brought to every challenge. Ambassador Torres addressed the emergency session of the Galactic Council 3 days later. The chamber was packed with representatives eager to understand what they had witnessed. The Terran Federation's military doctrine is based on a simple principle, Torres explained. Every citizen has the right to live free from fear, and we will pay any price necessary to defend that right. The Void Ravagers learned that some prices are higher than they are willing to pay. The galaxy had learned something important about their newest members. Humans might be crude and primitive by civilized standards, but they possessed something that advanced technology couldn't replicate: the absolute determination to protect the innocent, regardless of the cost. From that day forward, the phrase, "They thought we'd send aid," became synonymous throughout the galaxy with an important lesson: never underestimate a species that treats impossible odds as a routine obstacle to overcome.